Welcome to Through Your Looking Glass, a podcast that explores the world of research technology. Combining speed and insights, ResTech reflects a deeper knowledge of the people around us. We're leading the conversation about this complex industry, which spans from traditional market research to advertising, media measurement, and beyond. Join us as we chat with experts and enthusiasts in the ResTech community and learn more about its evolution, application, and ever-growing potential.
Well, welcome. My name is Patrick Comer. I'm the founder and CEO of Lucid. And on this episode of Through Your Looking Glass, I am joined with the ever-esteemable Jonathan Knight, co-founder and CEO of QMe, based out of London and parts therein. I'm very excited to have you here today, Jonathan, so welcome.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Great to be here. Really looking forward to this chat.
I am too. I've been looking forward to this for a while, mainly because your background and what you're doing with QMe is so aligned with everything happening in ResTech. So I'm just excited to get in. Just so everyone knows, our kind of topic for the day is really exploring machine learning, or as often called artificial intelligence in research, but also how Jonathan and his team's background in finance has informed their approach to how they've run their business in the market research ecosystem. But before we get into any of all that, Jonathan, I think that I'd really love to level set and honestly get to know you a little bit better. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how long and how you got into this industry.
We are newcomers, really, to the industry. I was actually thinking about that question, and it's a little bit under 4 years since we started looking at online sample. We had an ad tech business before that with quite a big user base, and we started offering surveys, and that part of our business has just taken off since then. And as I guess you mentioned, Patrick, this is the sort of second career for me. My first career was in finance. I've worked in lots of different locations around the world in financial markets as a derivatives trader by trade, and then ended up sort of running a global team for a big investment bank. And then even before that, I guess really in the dim and distant past, I have a computer science master's from Cambridge University. And so I guess all of those threads have sort of come together in the business that we've really built in the last few years at QMe, really related to trying to survey buyers the right people in front of their questions. And that's really what we focus on day to day.
Well, I remember you coming to SampleCon years ago and talking about the correlating marketplace dynamics and lessons learned from your experience in derivatives trading, which I'm sure most people have no idea what exactly that means, but the trading aspects of your background and how you saw correlation and commonality with what's happening in programmatic as marketplaces and automation are really started to take hold and change the way that data is bought and sold through research.
Yeah, we were really very lucky because I think, obviously the marketplaces had been around for a few years by the time we came into the market, and volumes were starting to really grow rapidly. And that gave us a window of opportunity where we could apply those types of things that you've talked about to the marketplaces, and hopefully do a good job of driving our business, but also driving, when we grow, the other side of the ecosystem grows as well, and we all grow together. So, we were really very fortunate, I think, to have that opportunity at that point in time when marketplaces were really starting to take off themselves. So it's been a really symbiotic relationship, I guess, in a lot of ways. And I think we've been able to come at things from a slightly different angle, having not been in the business, having from more of a financial background and a marketplace background. We look at price and volume and trading opportunities maybe in a slightly different way. And hopefully that allows us to plug into a wider range of people that we can feed in to get answers from.
As you can, how can you describe some of the slightly different ways that you look at the problem set that you brought from the finance background?
I guess there are two main learnings that we brought. Learning number one was that automation drives huge volume increases. If you look back at financial markets, particularly in the late 90s, early 2000s, they went through a wave of automation, and we could just copy that playbook. The more automated you're able to be, the more frictionless that the market can be. Volumes can increase, and not just linearly. They can increase, exponentially as these things get better. And I think we've seen that play out in many ways. But also, what's probably more exciting is I think we're going to see that play out even more in the future, because in some ways the automation is not complete yet all the way through the stack. And I think that there's plenty of opportunities. And I think we're planning on volumes being 10 times as big as they are now. We always have that plan in our mind, and we think that's the case. So I think that's point number one. The second part is how we price opportunities. And for us, that is a balance between us being able to reach the right person in the world the survey buyer wants to talk to, and engaging them enough in the process that they're happy to do the survey and complete it and good answers. And I think we've talked about this before, Patrick. We thought that pricing in the market was quite skewed compared to what it should be.
Yep.
So we picked certain spots in the market, and I don't want to give away all of our secrets. But we picked
you don't have to give away everything, just a few.
I can give away some. But we picked certain spots in the market that we think are slightly better priced from the perspective of us being able to bring new people into the ecosystem.
Yep.
New eyeballs, and we've really focused on those parts. I think there were times when plenty of people looked at us and went, "You guys are crazy. You're doing this part of the market. What about all this?" But actually, we found real value there, and that has enabled us to grow a big active user base, and then possibly spread out a little bit into sort of slightly other parts. But that was really the secret, is being able to look at that and in a way that traders would look at different stocks, or possibly, if anyone's looked at it, the yield curve in the bond market. We would look at the survey market more like that. And that served us, I think, really, really well, and has enabled us to grow very quickly.
You reminded me of when we first met. I think it was in our old original WeWork offices in London. And we sat down in one of their, open conference rooms back when we could do that, meet together in a place.
Yeah.
And after that conversation, I called my brother, who is also a quantitative trader, and said, "Guess what? Some quantitative traders who understand finance and the trading process are entering into the ecosystem, entering into the marketplace, and they're going to do great because they understand, or they think about the process of providing the right person into the right survey for the right price. They have a different framework on how to price or how to manage that process based upon your background." Now, I was thrilled at that time, and it does not surprise me at all that your business has taken off so much over the past couple of years. And it's been great to see as a partner, but also just as a maturing of our overall industry.
Yeah, and and as I said, I think we were lucky with the timing. We came in at a good time when there was plenty of opportunity there for us. I think coming in now would probably be a little bit harder. I think the competition has gone up. The bar goes up every year. We need to continue to improve. All of us. But we were fortunate. I think there seemed to us to be a big opportunity, and we jumped on it, and it's worked out really well. And I think what it also shows is actually being part of a network of businesses, a whole ecosystem of businesses, makes a huge difference, because we could rely on other people being there for us. We only had to worry about half the problem, not the whole problem. We focus very much on the respondent, the user coming in, and we haven't had to worry about any of the other pieces. And that's allowed us to focus and really drive our understanding of that and build a sort of flywheel that enables us to get better, hopefully, every day.
Well, I want to double click on something you said a second ago, that we should all see 10 times the current scale or volume as automation really is implemented through the entire ResTech stack. And I think you're absolutely right. As much as we've seen programmatic and automation transform the process of data collection, the process of research through ResTech over the past couple of years, there is still an incredible amount of work to be done for a fully automated entire implementation. And so I see that scale being not only possible, but probable over the next couple of years. And that's what gets me excited. I was literally telling our entire North America sales team yesterday that we're at the beginning of all the transformation in our space. This is the in a sense, day zero for ResTech, that there's so much happening over the next decade as this business continues to mature and evolve. So just overall excitement. It may be helpful for those who are uninitiated to understand a little bit more about what QME does and how you position your company in the overall ecosystem. It'd be great to get a quick background on that.
We are a very user-focused business. We have panel load. To be honest, we slightly walk away from that word, but that's probably the word that most people would use for us.
Okay.
We have our own panel in the currently English-speaking markets. We have built technology which allows us to recruit new members to QME. And I think you said the phrase that I love, which is put the right survey in front of the right person at the right time. And what that means is that we strive to be incredibly efficient about matching users to survey opportunities, making sure they're the right people, they are real people, and doing all of that in 100% automated fashion. So, we are doing millions of survey completes, and we have a staff of 22 people, and it has been COVID, so we've not been in the office. But even when we're in the office, it's fairly quiet. The computers are doing all the work. It feels more like a quantitative trading floor than anything else. We look at how the machinery is operating, and we can move dials on the machinery. We don't really do anything directly manually. That is the tech stack that we have built that really enables us to deliver quality, hopefully, eyeballs into survey opportunities. And we've been exclusively focused on that side of the business.
And when did this concept of machine learning or AI start becoming embedded in this matching challenge that you solve?
I guess it's good and bad news, right? We were newbies into the industry, so we had no preconceptions. So we looked at the problems that we were faced with, thousands and thousands of different demographic questions. How is that tractable in any sort of real way so that you can find the right person to pluck out of your audience to put in front of a survey opportunity? We are plugged into multiple platforms, and they're all demographic requirements are different. We have to map between them. There are tens of thousands of different questions, and we don't want to keep asking our users repeatedly similar or very similar questions again and again and again, because our aim is to get people into the survey in a positive frame of mind, right? They've been asked as little as possible. The process is as frictionless as possible. So we have this machine, and when you're faced with a problem like that, and there are a few problems like that, I think, in ResTech, when you're faced with a problem like that of huge complexity, huge amounts of data, it's changing quite frequently. It's updating all the time. I think the only toolkit that makes sense to make that work is a machine learning toolkit, because you can't do this stuff manually. It would take hundreds of people to be manually mapping that all the time. So we use machine learning to do analysis of the questions and the answers, and that allows us to, often the questions are very similar, repeating, and we can crush those down into a much smaller subset of things that are actually being asked. We can use the natural language in the questions to map that to what our users have told us about themselves. And I guess, as importantly, the real secret sauce is that when we understand a little bit about a user, we can actually predict quite a lot about the rest of their profile. So that means we don't have to ask them 200 questions. We might only have to ask them 25 questions, and that actually gives us a lot of information. So, for example, if you live in a certain location and you're a certain age and you have kids, we can have a pretty good guess. Do you have a dog? Or what sort of car do you drive? We don't have to necessarily ask you those questions in order to present you with surveys that are related to pets or to cars or whatever, or flights. It's a massive machine learning problem that goes on sort of all the time. And we can talk a little bit about what that actually means in real life in terms of what we have to do day to day, because I think that's interesting too. But basically it allows us to make that problem much more tractable. And why do we care? We care because we want people, when they see a survey opportunity, to click into it and for it to work. We don't want it to fail. We want them to come in straight away to the right survey with a smile on their face, happy to answer the questions that are being presented to them. Those are the things, if we can make it as frictionless as possible for that event to happen, you have a better population of users coming into your questions.
Well, I have to imagine that setting up that kind of what I'll call demographic crushing, where you take a huge distribution of different types of questions, even though they're phrased slightly similarly, they're not the same question, which is a huge morass of data to try to figure out, and to crush that down into very specific targets that you understand for your respondents. But then also the inference piece, I think, is remarkable, and it may actually be challenging to some research thinking out there that you may present a respondent for a pet study about dog food, let's say, without the respondent having told QME that they're a pet owner, much less a dog owner. But all the
Yes.
other characteristics would point to the likelihood is very, very high. Now, of
Yep.
course, in the survey that the researcher is presenting, they're going to ask those questions. Are you a dog owner, et cetera, to make sure they
Yeah.
narrow it down. But I think it's often lost on researchers that we're trying to reduce, as an industry, reduce the friction for users to actually qualify for surveys,
Yeah.
but qualify in a way that's productive from a quality of response standpoint.
Yeah.
And so this whole inference probably has a dramatic effect on your ability to target respondents quickly, because you could always
Yeah.
ask more questions, right?
Well,
Are you a dog owner? But instead of
exactly.
asking, you just assume.
Yeah. And if we want to get all mathematical about it, which can go into a black hole there, but basically what we try and do is ask them questions that are not the same as the data we already have about them. If we know that you're a certain sort of person, we won't have to ask some quite a big set of questions, but we might ask something completely different, like, when did you last travel? That will give us another data point that will then open up a whole new load of opportunities for them. And you're right, it's really about getting them in easily without repeatedly asking again and again and again the same questions. It's about getting them into the survey opportunity in the right frame of mind to answer the questions that the survey actually cares about, rather than a lot of these pre-qualifying things.
We track with you a concept called conversion, which is the probability that when a respondent shows up to a survey opportunity, they actually are able to take it, right? And QME is well known for having high conversions. And so how much of that conversion improvement do you think is correlated to machine learning and AI just in this kind of demographic matching and inference
I
problem?
think if we took away that part, our conversion rate would go down a chunk. I mean, we try and target roughly 30%-ish conversion if we can. I think we'd be in the high teens, 20 type number without this. I think that's probably adding 10% to our conversion rate. But as importantly, the other thing it allows us to do is to bring a broader audience into the studies, because we don't just have to rely on the people who've said they have pets.
Right.
We can take a whole population of whom only 10% may have answered the pet question, but out of the other 90%, there may be another 10% who do have pets. So instead of being stuck with 10%, we get 20%. We've just doubled our addressable audience.
Yep.
So apart from it just being a conversion rate thing, I think that's actually really, really important for the survey buyer, because they get a much broader audience coming in and matching and targeting into the correct study. So I think it's good for us, but it's also good for the buyers.
Well, it's great for a buyer who is concerned that all of their responses have been predisposed and targeted for the thing that they're trying to test. If we go back to an old world view of random digit dialing or randomness in a sampling process, you're in some way providing some of that into the sampling, because not everyone's been tested or responded to the specific question. Are you a dog owner? Has been asked of everyone.
Exactly. And look, our view of the world, and we talked about volumes exploding, but we want 10 times as many people to take surveys as take surveys. Now, we don't want 10 times the volume with the same number of people doing surveys. We need to spread the population of people who are happy to come into the survey market and spend their time doing this. And the only way to do that is to make the processes frictionless and even better, fun, if we can get to there, as it can be. So we spend a huge amount of time looking at these little micro frictions. Is there a way that we can just improve that flow, with the right people coming in?
Yep.
to make it a better experience for them, because then they're just going to be more inclined to answer the questions that the researchers have interest in.
I love that concept of a micro friction.
Yeah.
Mainly because these little things add up. And if you're thinking about it from a research buyer perspective, what we're trying to establish in ResTech is the ability to have a large access to a large population.
Mm-hmm.
And historically, only a small percentage of the population were willing to take online surveys, or at least that was the concern. But as we use, whether it's machine learning or better UX or UI design or better incentives, all these little frictions or challenges that are removed as the hurdles decrease and the efficiency increases, it means on a daily basis, the number of humans that are able and willing to take a survey is only expanding.
Yeah.
And I get excited by this because that's that 10x, like expanding the population that's available is amazing.
And again, it's one of these measures where you can move it a little bit, but actually it can have an outsized effect. Again, it's not a linear process. If we can make taking surveys 10% better, however you want to define better, that probably, doubles your addressable population. So these are really, really important things. And if the industry is going to go to volume, which I think it is, we have to address these issues between us all, because otherwise we're just not going to have the pyramid of people at the bottom to be able to feed in the data that's wanted.
Right. The demand of data might be larger than the supply capacity. Right. That's the challenge we're trying to solve for. And I think that human curiosity, the number of people who have questions and need answers, is only scaling. That's only getting bigger and bigger. And so the available population to answer those questions also needs to scale with it. Even at Lucid, we've been focusing on this concept of conversion, not within the same matching, obviously, from our partners at QME, but how do we make sure that the survey inventory, the demand, are converting better? And I think it's been a lot of ahas with a lot of different partners on the buy side, whether they're market research agencies or other research platforms, that their conversion rate will improve their sample quality. Like the more they work on a better product, the better their quality, and also their conversion and their supply will also increase. It's remarkable what can be accomplished there.
I've been waiting for the day when we start to see one of the buyers kick in with an 80% conversion rate. Surveys that our users are desperate to get into because they're sort of fun and they always convert. They'll be able to do that at a very interesting price point, because from my perspective, I care about that whole experience. And if we can get the conversion rate up to much, much higher levels, that is transformational in terms of who we can bring in at the bottom end. We haven't seen it yet, but I'm just waiting for the day when our platform monitoring team come in and say, hey, XYZ buyer is suddenly converting at 80%. And that'll be a really interesting moment.
Lucid conversions dramatically improve year over year. And I think there's probably a moment in the US elections in 2020 when there were a lot of surveys converting at above 50%, where there was an amazing volume, an amazing conversion, and a special moment for our business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, it's coming. You can see all the trends are in the right direction.
Yeah.
Selfishly, from our perspective, we don't want it to get too easy, because I think, we're operating quite well in the current environment. But still, I think as an industry, we need to be ambitious and think about those types of targets. How can we make it so that everybody wants to spend the 5 minutes that they're having their coffee break, answering some questions that they have on a topic that they have either knowledge or interest in?
Well, I think the other topic that comes up all the time around machine learning and AI is around quality and fraud. And I have to imagine that there's an interesting amount of work that you're doing that's AI related to fraud. So I'd like to learn more about how you approach that problem.
In a way, it has all the same characteristics as a problem, right? You have a huge amount of data, which is all the people coming in and the actions that they take. It changes quite frequently. The fraud problem evolves actually almost on an hourly basis, or certainly on a daily basis, in that people get blocked and then they try new things. So that's changing all the time. And it's also something you have to react to very rapidly, because for many of the people doing this, if they can take a couple of dollars out of the system, that's a win. And they'll come back tomorrow and do it again. So even if they get shut down quickly, if they can just take a little bit out, that's surprisingly, for their economics, that works. When you look at it, it's actually, you can't do it manually. It just doesn't work, because you just can't apply the same resources to the thousands and thousands of people coming in fraudulently or badly into the platform. So again, we spend a lot of time building our anti-fraud system using machine learning. It's a very different way of thinking about the problem, right? We basically spend a little bit of time every day checking the people that it's labeled either as good or bad, and just confirming in our own minds, do we think that that is true? And obviously we take feedback back from the buyers and the platforms back in. So the job really becomes more about labeling the outputs if the system is wrong, and then running the model on all the different parameters that you can sort of think of, and there's a whole art in building the model and whatever. And what's really interesting about it is you discover things that you would never have thought of, because the machine picks up patterns that you would never, ever have thought. The correlation between time of day and the price of surveys, or the correlation between somebody's age and their IP address, or there's weird correlations that the machine sees. And what's great about it is the machine has no preconceptions. So it finds people that you would have probably excluded because you would have thought, that can't be right. We'll never find them there. And then suddenly you're finding them. So we run a system that is relearning the parameters every hour or so. Everybody who comes onto our platform gets fed through the system, which we call Cubed. We're stuck with the sort of Q name because of QME in the first place.
So Q everywhere.
Right? Everything queued. Yeah, everything's Q. So I think it's been, touch wood, and it's been amazingly effective at weeding out bad actors from our platform. And we throw out thousands and thousands of people a day. And the other really important thing that we really care about, I guess it's more important maybe for us as an audience business, is we don't want to reject good people.
Right.
So it's really, really important not to throw out people who are good. For us, obviously, because we want good users to stay on our platform, but actually for the whole ecosystem. If we're making life so hard for regular users by throwing a huge number of obstacles in their way and questions, and you've got to confirm this and that, actually the only people left will be the really hardcore people or the fraudsters, because they're the only ones who have the patience to fight through these multiple extra questions. It's really, really important that the good people get a smooth ride, and we it's similar to the conversation we just had, but that we need to give them an easy ride and the fraudsters the hard ride. So that's basically how our system works, and it's literally updating itself every hour and changing every hour. It's not something that you could do by hand at all. It just doesn't, it wouldn't work.
Well, it reminds me of the evolution of passwords, CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA, people banks in particular, sending SMS codes to phones.
Yeah.
And there's this balance between security or anti-fraud, but also giving your customers the ability to actually use your products and services in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And so, look, I think what that means is that as an industry, we have to accept there is going to be some fraud on surveys.
Yep.
We just got to make sure that it's a low enough percentage that it's not going to affect the outcome of the research. I think that's clearly the most important thing. We see a lot of people coming in out of country, and particularly since COVID, when economies around the world have been absolutely crushed.
Yep.
For them to earn a couple of dollars a day doing surveys is a lot of money.
Yep.
And they are massively incented to do that, and they will keep doing it whilst that money is available to them, and keep, in a way, reinvesting in their business. We need to cut into that cycle really fast to stop it being a profitable thing for them to spend their time doing. And that's the only way in the end we're all going to slow this down.
I keep hearing you say the individual. And so when I think about fraud, I think about individual users who are using systems and processes to claim they're someone they're not, right? And take surveys. But I also know, there are what I'll call survey farms out there, groups of individuals together who are tackling the problem or the opportunity. And there may even be systems, technology, infrastructure. And I guess what I'm trying to ask is is there like a priority order or problem order that you currently see? Because you keep saying the individual. Is that the main source of fraud that you see? And the others are like, stories we tell our kids at night to keep them awake. And there's these fraud farms out there, and that's not really.
I think, individual is probably a mischaracterization. Biggest section we see is sort of farms.
Okay.
Groups of people. You can actually go into some deep, dark corners of the web and see these groups coalescing. We've seen groups that have offices with seats in them, lots of seats on a floor where they can all gang together. And I think a bit like bingo, someone gets into a survey, gets through the survey, they jump up and say, this is how to do it. And then everybody else on the floor will try and do the same one. They're very heavily invested in Facebook groups and other groups where they can gather and share information. And there are sort of leaders who are giving them the toolkit, the PayPal accounts, the bank accounts, the IP addresses so that they can, and identities so that they can pretend to be someone in the US or in the UK. So there's a whole sort of ecosystem out there which is attacking our business. And I think we all need to treat it as a significant threat. It sounds crazy, but it is a significant threat to our business. We need to be really focused on this.
I remember when I first got into this ResTech game back in 2003, a lifetime ago, a technology, several generations of technology ago, and seeing for the first time, fraudsters coming out of, not the US, taking our US surveys. And it was quite simple at the time. And I reflect on the fact that fraud is not something you solve and you're done. It is an ongoing, and either as a company, you're ahead of the wave or you're behind it, right? Either you're making the investments of technology and process and infrastructure to be in front of that curve, or you get crushed by it. And that wave moves back and forth as technology improvements happen in ResTech. They're often mirrored and improved upon in the fraud game. And so it's a constant battle. It's not something you win, it's something you manage, I guess.
You got to manage. We got to manage it down to a sort of an acceptable level. It's not going to be zero. We got to manage it down to a reasonable level. And you're right. It changes every day. And look, they're massively incented to come at us because this is big money for them. So they're not going to stop unless it becomes non-economic or marginally economic. So that's right. And I guess the other part of this is we're only as strong as our weakest link here. If there's a weak link in the chain, they will find it and try and swamp the system. There are a lot of different companies in the system from the bottom all the way up to the top where the buyer is, and they all have to be strong if you're going to be resilient to this.
Yep.
That is a problem for all of us.
Well, the good news is that I can attest to the fact that QME is one of the leaders in terms of managing fraud among all the partners that we work with.
Well, that's good to hear because we do spend a lot of time and effort, focused on it. So, I mean, thank goodness it seems to be paying off to some extent.
It's definitely paying off not only for your business, but also for Lucid as a marketplace. We've seen our overall fraud rates dramatically decrease year over year, minus like 20% between 2019 to 2020. So it's exciting that there's been that much improvement, but I know that it's going to be a constant challenge.
Yeah.
But moving on to this concept of ResTech and how AI is impacting it, are there other areas of your business where you see machine learning really driving value for what you do?
I think we have 18 different machine learning processes running at
processes running.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of them do really silly little things, right? Nothing that interesting.
What's the silliest process that you're running?
I think the silliest process is if we put a new country and we do this whole demographic mapping against the questions and answers and sort of do it, so we're not having to manually do the 100% of it. We end up only having to do like 20% of it at the bottom end. So that's something we've just brought in. But actually, we have a machine learning system that actually tunes the parameters in our main model, and that's the model that decides, in the end, which survey someone is going to see out of a list of surveys. And that's complex because there are lots of different factors. What's the person? Do they like short or long surveys? Do they like higher price or lower price? And there are lots of factors on the other side. We have all this data around. Here's an opportunity and it's going to take this long to do. And this is, so mapping those two things together is, with 30 or 40 different factors, it's sort of impossible to do by hand. So our machine learning system sort of learns that and tries to optimize for the things we like, which is we've talked about a high conversion rate, actually a high retention rate for our users, and a high success rate of getting them into the right surveys. So that's an ongoing process that tunes itself all the time.
Yep.
We were pretty nervous when we put that in for the first time because, you're giving the keys to the car, you're saying, here you go, you run everything. And we put it within quite tight bounds. But actually, it's been incredibly successful. And the market does have rhythms. Some months are different to other months. Some quarters are different to other quarters. Depending on the supply-demand balance, it retunes the parameters all the time to try and give us the best business result. That, again, if we're talking about percentage improvements in our business, that's another few percent. And, so you keep adding these up, hopefully, and you end up in the end with a good answer.
These micro improvements or micro friction that you're solving for add up over time. Can you tell us a little bit about your tech stack for ML? Right, there are different types of infrastructure and packages that can use. Can you give us just a little bit? And if I were someone who wanted to start investing, maybe there's a recommendation on how to start, or just hire QME, obviously. But
that's clearly the first thing to do. An exorbitant price.
If I'm in a different part of the industry that's not, supplying respondents into surveys, what's your tech stack look like, and how would I approach it if I'm trying to invest?
So when we started doing this, we sort of built by hand a lot of stuff, but I wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
Yep.
Where we've ended up is we use an awful lot of different components on Amazon Web Services, on AWS.
Okay.
And what we've had to do is sort of learn. It's a complex system to sort of set up in the first place, and you have to learn. It's quite a high barrier to learning. But once you get over that barrier, it's amazing the power that you can get for really amazingly small amounts of money. I mean, it's, we run our machine learning for dollars a day. It's really quite incredible, given all the money given all the data points that are coming in and what we're doing. We went from much more bespoke to start with to actually just using the different components in AWS and just plugging them all together. We spent a lot of time building a sort of giant data source with every conceivable bit of data in it. We have click data, we have hover data over the different things, we have, user actions, we have sign up data, we have, timestamps on everything, and huge amount of inventory data that we pull down from you guys, for example. And so, we basically went, okay, every single piece of data in our business, however big or small it is, we're going to put in one place. And we use Amazon again for that. Once you've got it in one place, then you can apply all of these models against it. And it's incredible what comes out of that, actually. If we have a very strong group of data scientists, I guess that's the other piece of this. You need the people to be able to do it. It's amazing what they're able to find out of the data. And you slightly got to give them space to do it. It's an exploration rather than a sort of deterministic thing. But once they get comfortable and start really digging into the data, it's incredible the insights that we've been able to get. We use all the time, just as we said, this continuous improvement. We just want to chip away at this business all the time, trying to get better and better and better every day in small leaps rather than sort of big jumps, because that seems over time to have been, one of the keys of our success. So we just use Amazon for pretty much everything. I mean, I guess you can use Google in the same way. It's probably not quite as featureful, but depending on where you start from. Unfortunately, I think you have to jump into one platform and just sort of commit to it and spend a lot of time learning how to use it. Then it'll pay off eventually.
Well, it sounds like you need the right data scientists, you need the right data infrastructure and architecture, and then you need the right, whether it's AWS or otherwise.
We've wired up our app, for example, our mobile app, which, I think 80% of our users come into us on mobile. I mean, we've wired up our mobile app to send information to us about thousands of events coming in all the time. Yep. Every single thing that somebody does, swiping or moving or looking or hovering or times of day or activity, because you never really know what you're going to need. And I've always found that when we ask a question, it's, oh no, we don't quite have that data. And you just don't want that to be the blocker, right? You want to have the data to be answering questions. So a huge amount of effort went into that, just streaming every data point down into the big data lake that holds it all.
I don't know if folks listening in are going to be excited by and or daunted by that proposition, right?
I think they should be excited because look, the fact is we are 20, I think we're up to 20, we have added people, but we're 24 people. You can get a huge amount of leverage with a team of 3 or 4 people. You don't need hundreds of people to do this. It's 3 or 4. You have to give it some time to spin up because it's not something that's going to produce answers in the first week or even the first month or two, because there's a lot of setting up to do.
Yep.
But once you have that infrastructure in place and you can answer really interesting questions about what's going on, the power of that is incredible.
Just look at your performance, how you've been able to grow your business so successfully. Obviously, we see your success both in terms of volume and quality and the rest. So it's obvious to me that an investment in ML and AI can transform and grow your business. But what I'd like to do is move on to some of our final questions. And one of them is, what was your first job and how have you continued to use lessons from that?
That's a really interesting question. I was sponsored through university by the Army. I used to go in holidays and things to Germany, which at the time, I'm showing my age, of course, but at the time there was a border in Germany, and we had the Soviet Union on the other side of the border and us on one side of the border. And I used to go and have to, as a fairly raw 19-year-old, have to go and command, and I put that in inverted commas because clearly no one would trust me to do anything, but command a platoon of men in my holidays from university. Fortunately, I had a sort of grizzled sergeant who actually did everything. I could just pretend. That experience is incredible, right? Because you have to grow up really fast. You're suddenly in charge. People are looking to you for answers that you may or may not have. That was a really growing experience for me because I led a life. I was at school and then at university, you would lead quite a sheltered life, right? And suddenly you're in this world, which is very different. So that was a really big deal. And I think really helped set me up for my career later in finance and then starting my own company and building it. I think you learn those lessons about how to relate to all sorts of different people, which are really important.
Well, along those same lines, in your professional environment, what's the best bit of hard feedback that you've ever received?
I had a moment when I was in investment banking where I didn't get a promotion that I thought I was going to get. Anyone who knows about investment banking, there's this phrase, which is you're up or you're out. If you don't keep moving up the hierarchy, eventually they kick you out altogether. So it was a pretty sobering moment. And I went to my manager and I said, look, I thought that I was going to get this. I'm really astonished that I didn't. What he said to me was, you've got to remember that it's not about what you want. It's about what are you helping everybody else do? What are you adding to the whole business? And not just your desk, your thing. What are you adding to the business? You want to be a senior person in this business. You've got to be helping other people, being more than just a person sitting at a desk. That was quite a difficult, because I had thought the way to get on was to put your head down and just do your own thing and forget about everybody else. And actually, that was really good advice because none of us is an island. If we want our businesses to work well, we have to work with other people, trust other people, get things to happen at a bigger scale, and you can't do it on your own. That was probably the best piece of advice I've had in my career at a difficult time, when I was frankly pretty upset and was really thinking about what am I doing? No one likes to sit through that type of conversation, right?
What's usually the hard bits of feedback when you don't want to hear it that are the most valuable, right?
Yeah, and I think looking back, my manager he was only a few years older than me. Most people don't like delivering bad news, but actually sometimes the very best thing you can do for someone is to deliver the bad news, in a way that's constructive. You don't want to, there's no point, beating somebody up, but to deliver bad news in a constructive way is actually really, really important. If you don't do it, people's careers end up not working, right? Because they end up carrying on doing things that they shouldn't do or not doing things they should do and never really improving. it's actually a really important lesson for all of us. If we're trying to be leaders, you've got to be candid with people.
I got to be honest, as a leader, as a CEO, that's been one of my struggles, is giving hard feedback, saying no, being candid about performance and expectations. And I can't say that I've resolved it or I hope I've gotten better, but it's definitely an ongoing place where I need to continue to learn and develop.
No one likes to do it, right? No one likes to give people bad news. It's a tough thing to do.
There's some people I know that are really, really strong at it and almost on some level enjoy it, right? There are some people who are like that, but I don't think that's the majority of folks out there.
No, I don't think so at all. I think most people are in business because they like being with other people and want to be in a group. It is actually probably one of the most important things that we can do in a constructive way.
Well, the last question I ask is, what's the most important thing that you've learned from your mother?
My mother was always kind to people. She was always positive and kind to people in a way that always made people feel good about being around her. And again, we've just talked about giving people tough messages, and I think you can do that in a kind way. But the flip side of that is, we should also be kind and understanding of the people that have chosen to work with us. We both have started businesses, we have a vision, and we want to bring people with us. And I think in order to do that, you have to be understanding of them and be kind to them and make them want to feel good about being part of what you're doing. She was an exemplar of that, and I try and do that in my life, though frankly, I'm not as natural at it as she was.
Well, I can just say, from my standpoint, you do exemplify those aspects of kindness, of candidness, but also general trust in others. And I think that's, both of us are in businesses that rely on not only our role of CEO, but our businesses rely on other companies to do things for mostly the right reasons all the time. Yeah. And that requires a tremendous amount of trust. But as we build trust together as an ecosystem, it allows us to scale and grow faster. So that trust is not misplaced. But I can say that you are an exemplar of that trust, and I've always appreciated that in you.
Well, Patrick, thank you for saying that. I'll try and live up to that over the next few years as we build 10x of where we are today. I think that's right, and we have a great opportunity, all of us. This market ecosystem is amazing. I think ResTech is really just starting.
Yeah.
So I think we should all really try and live up to that. And if we can rely on each other, then I think we've all got a huge opportunity ahead of us.
Well, I very much appreciate you joining today, Jonathan. Thank you for your time and your energy and your passion around AI and going through all those elements. That was fascinating.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Patrick. Really good to see you and hopefully in person when the world changes again.
May we be in person soon enough, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But thanks again for joining for this episode of Through Your Looking Glass. Again, I'm Patrick Comer, and I've been joined by Jonathan Knight, the founder and CEO of QME. And this has been a delightful conversation around the topics of machine learning, artificial intelligence, but also a little bit deeper into the value of conversion and how we can all work together to improve the number of people on the planet every single day that are willing and able to take surveys, which is a benefit to everyone in the ResTech ecosystem. So thank you for joining.
Patrick, thank you.
Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. For information on ResTech, our complete list of episodes, and more, visit luc.id/lookingglass.